Teachers at Reddit, what's the most NSFW thing a student said or did to you? Did you know which ones had a crush on you? One of my students came into class one day and said, "Emma Hutsutrolson, can I ask you a question about college?" Seeing an opportunity to help him prepare for his future, I said, "Of course, student. What do you want to know? Did you ever have a threesome?" At my school, we did this thing called the culture fair. Picture a science fair but held by the language department. Students had to pick a topic that had to do with the culture language which they were studying. We were given most of the school year to work on it, and it was worth a good portion of our final grades. It blew. Anyway, one kid who was studying Spanish decided to do his report on cockfighting. His goal was to never say the words rooster or chicken once. He created a long PowerPoint and a large, visually impressive treefold poster board about cockfighting, each with the titles The Duel of Cocks. He started the presentation with some fun cock facts. When the young female teacher tried to correct him during his portion on proper fighting etiquette, he asked her, "Ems, teacher's name, what do you know about handling cocks?" He ended the presentation with the line, "Now that's one big cock. Damn, I miss that kid." Edit. Wow, this grew fast. Thanks for the gold. I'm sure he would be proud. Being a smarter kid, the project was pretty legitimate and put together well. However, he was punished for obvious reasons and received a low C. I don't think he minded a few detentions though. Kid in my old middle school once asked her teacher if she had kids. She responds no, and he says I could fix that with the douchiest smirk I've ever seen. Teacher tells him she doesn't want to adopt him with the second douchiest smirk I've ever seen. I coached gymnastics and I had kids tell me ridiculous things that I had exactly no response to. One kid told me he put AA batteries up his butt. I just looked at him for a while, cocked my head to the side with a confused look, then told him not to do it anymore. Another kid told me that Justin Bieber made his front privates happy. I said nothing, but wondered what other privates there were in this kid's mind. Why do boys like girls' breasts? Don't they know they are used to feed babies? I was pretty shocked to receive this question by a 9-year-old. As a young high school teacher, yes, we do know who has a crush on us. I'm always conscious about who is in the room and that I'm never alone with a girl or even a small group of girls if possible. While I've had girls flirt with me, nobody has ever come out and said anything extremely vulgar to my face or within earshot. I have had girls rat other girls out though. "Oh, so and so thinks you are so hot," or "they talk about you all the time." I try and end conversations there. The accusation, true or not, is so damaging to a male high school teaching career. I am very cognizant of what is being said and avoid anything that could be misconstrued. Edit spelling. Not a teacher, sorry, but when I was in high school one of my teachers was bent over while grading a paper. One of my friends walked up behind her in front of the whole class and started making an extremely suggestive motion with his hips. He never touched her, so she didn't notice he was there, and he ended up getting a solid 15 seconds of fake humping in. He stopped right as she turned around, and she had no clue why we were all laughing and looking horrified at the same time. I've had a couple students flirt with me, but nothing too out of line or crazy. I usually give them a stern cut that it out look for a few seconds and go about my lesson. The only time I had to actually discipline a student for something vulgar directed towards me was when one girl told me, "You know Emma, Ulrich 12, I bet my aunt would love to suck your D." Me oh cute, step out into the hallway while I call an AP down here. That is extremely inappropriate. Actually, this happened just this week at the school my mom works at. A 72-year-old teacher was teaching class and this kid kept mocking sexual hand gestures at her. She didn't say anything because it freaked her out so much. Then, the teacher picked up a pile of books and the kid runs up behind her, puts his arms around her, and grabs her tits. The teacher ran out of the room as everyone laughed. Someone even filmed it, so apparently people were in on it. Joke's on him though. He was arrested 10 minutes later. My girlfriend is a teacher. She was teaching summer school last year. A kid repeatedly made suggestive comments throughout one class. At one point, she was at his desk to help him. He proceeded to grab her head and in one long stroke he licked her face, jawline to hairline. Had the attractive pay teacher straddling me demonstrating CPR. To this day I am proud I didn't get a boner. This happened just last week. A bunch of my older male pupils were messing about in class and punching each other's arms as hard as they could. I asked them, why do you all love to punch and hurt each other so much? And one of them turned to me, starts making a humping motion and said, well miss, I love a good pounding. Not a teacher, and it's probably not as exciting as the other stories on this thread, but I had a hot teacher in high school who I had a huge crush on. Being the stupid teenager I was, I started flirting with her subtly and automatically thought she'd be into me. I was so hot done acting on this feeling. I sent her an email. I wasn't even cool enough to say it to her face, saying that we should cut out the anonymous flirtation and just make a move. She later had me have a meeting with the guidance counselor about how a teacher would never engage in that because it would risk that job. The whole meeting I just wanted to kill myself. I was so embarrassed. Earlier this school year I found what I'm pretty sure was a butt plug in my classroom after a 7th grade class left. I still don't know who it came from and I don't really want to know. I had a 5th grade boy always running up to me and giving me unsolicited hugs. Though it was frowned upon. He had a messed up home life and wasn't well liked by his peers, so I justified hugging him back every so often because he seemed deprived of affection. After a few hugs I realized that at his height his head rested squarely on my well-endowed chest. I still kick myself for not catching on sooner. The little creep. 2 cases stand out. Capital A. Teen female student puts pencil in her shirt. She looks at me and says, "Mr. El Guapazo, I dropped my pencil. Can you get it out for me?" I shake my head and say no. Capital B. Teen female student has crush on me. I am giving lecture on science. I look her way and she is furiously sucking on a blow pop and sliding it in and out of her mouth. I look away and don't make any more eye contact with her for the day. I would have told the principal about these cases, but they wouldn't have believed me anyway. A lad in my class poked a pen up a male teacher's bum once. I teach 7th grade. A girl gave me this picture she drew for me during an end of the year study period. I took a look at it, tried not to crack a smile and read what her intentions were. She was totally serious. I soon realized it was my lanyard with my keys on it I were hanging from my pocket. I see you're trying to spice up your fantasy life. Teaching assistant here. One of my students told the entire school that he had done me. One of the kids told me out of pity and I had to report it to the head teacher. Oh the shame. Edit. No, you sick people. Over summer I met a young woman, perhaps 22 or 23, whilst working at a campground. I am 16 but have been mistaken for 20-21, which I attribute to my muscular black man body. We both worked as camp counselors and began to spend a fair bit of time together. Every night the other counselors and I would head up to the private bathhouse, reserved for employees, to shower and then hang out and swim on the lake. One night at about 1 AM, we all decided it would be a good idea to go skinny dipping before showers. Myself, this woman, and 6 others, 4F, 2M, streaked through camp and ziplined from the hill into the water. We hung out for about an hour before heading up to shower. In the shower I noticed her looking at me in my towel and she came up to me. She grabbed my towel and ripped it from me, waving it above her head and laughing. I told her to give it back but she replied, "You need to do something for me first," and rubbed her V. I fingered her for a good 15 minutes before she came, and she gave me my towel. We then parted and went back to the lodge. Fast forward to the first day of school and I was on my way to 5th period. I walk into my Spanish class and see the woman I fingered at camp. She was introduced as our new student teacher. Upon seeing me she looked mortified and immediately became flustered. She is still our student teacher, and we have a silent agreement to never talk about that night again. TLDR, I fingered a camp counselor and it happened she was a student teacher at my school the next year. I have a sneaking suspicion that the kid who wrote his phone number with a winky face on his name tag may possibly have had a crush on me. The kisses he kept blowing in my direction and suggestive eyebrow raises may have also been a tip-off. Edit. I was being facetious. He definitely has a crush on me. I once asked my high school physics teacher if his wife had big tits. He just grinned back at me and said, Well, they're certainly not small. During the year 12 graduation ceremony at the most academically prestigious high school in the country, one kid ran up to the principal and started thrusting his genitals at her. He was expelled before he could sit his final year 12 exams, and had to sit at the comprehensive high school down the road. He ended up getting a perfect score of 100 UAI in standardized tests, placing him at the top 0.024% of the state, beating the record for the comprehensive school by an entire 9 points. I work as a summer camp counselor, and one night I had a cabin of about 8 boys that were in their bunks at night. We let them stay up and talk for a bit with the lights off before sleep, and I was just outside talking with a couple of counselors in training and a co-counselor of mine, all girls, and all very good friends of mine. There was a pause in our conversation and we heard what the boys were talking about. They were playing a game called Marry, Duck, or Kill, where you list 3 people and decide which you marry, duck or kill. An all around innocent game that boys play. Well, right when the conversation between me and my co-workers stopped, we hear their 3 names come up, and once they all decided who they'd marry, duck or kill, they 3 girls burst in and start making fun of them. Never seen such red faces on little boys. My co-workers weren't offended at all and thought it was hilarious. The boys refused to look at them for a couple days after. Not a teacher, but in 8th grade my science teacher asked a student why he had left the room for so long. His reply, "I was in the bathroom," at which point the teacher turned around, and he followed up with "jerking off to you." I know for a fact that she heard this because I heard it, and I was on the opposite side of the room. She did not respond. I once told my teacher that my D was big enough to tickle her tonsils. I'm a fairly young first year teacher. A student who I knew had a crush on me said this, "MR, can I borrow $5? Me, I'm a teacher, I'm broke. Student, you should become a stripper, it's tax free and you will get more money. Plus, I would pay to see that." I was silent for 5 minutes. A Spanish teacher in my high school was caught blowing a student in the park across the street. We all found out when her mugshot started circulating through social media. I taught English at a private girls' high school in Japan when I was in my early 20s. Over 2 school years, I had 8 different female students knock on my apartment door and ask if they could come in. I said no to 5 of them. The first time I said yes, it was because a very cute girl told me she wanted private English lessons. She was a senior, had just turned 18, was one of my favorite students, and wanted to major in English at university. When we arranged for a schedule, Tuesday nights from 8 to 9, I started doing lesson plans, getting a good supplemental text, etc. The first night she showed up, she laughed at my prep work. "I don't really want English lessons," she said, followed by, "Is it okay if I use your shower before we have a sex?" I knew that I needed to ask her to leave immediately, so I handed her a towel and said, "Shampoo is in the cabinet." Edit. Spelling and details the rest of the story below. I'm pretty sure my hot teacher knew I had a crush on him because he was having a discussion with someone about blushing and then called me over as an example. I was mortified. Yes, we know exactly who has crushes on us. It's possibly the most unnerving and terrifying part of my job. To be the object of a teenager's juvenile attempts to seduce someone when they have no idea how to, without anyone in the general vicinity could start a rumor and get me fired. It makes my skin crawl. I'm a preschool teacher, and one day I was reading to one of my 3-year-old boys with him sitting in my lap. Out of nowhere he turns around and announces, "I know where your boobies are," and he pulls my shirt all the way down and puts his hand into my bra. I had to have a talk with his mom. Although not a teacher, while doing some postgrad work a few years ago, I was offered the chance to do some small workshop activity sessions with local high school aged 14-16 students on campus during the early evenings, roughly 5 p.m. or so. In total we, me and a few others, took around 6 of these groups over the span of a few weeks, and they all went well. After one of them, however, after packing away and leaving the building we were in, I came out and began walking to my car, only for a girl who had been in the group walk over to me. By this time, it was probably close to 6 p.m. or so and was pretty dark, as this would have been late November. She quite nonchalantly asked me if I wanted a blowjob. then proceeded to grab my groin while simultaneously lifting her school shirt and thrust a breast or two in my face. I told her to go home, leave me alone, and that I wasn't interested. TLDR, I got a face full of teen boobs and a D groping from some horny 15-year-old schoolgirl. I teach middle school, and the other day the kindergarten teacher needed several 8th grade students to help her with a project for the kindergartners. Now the kindergarten teacher is a 10/10. So needless to say, all the 8th grade boys wanted to volunteer. After class, one of the boys who didn't get picked and came up to me and said, "What the duck MR? For Jetsfun, Mrs. Smokashow kindergarten teacher has the nicest ass." When my friend and I were in high school, one of our attractive teachers walked by with a couple boxes of pizza. I said to him, "You should give us some of that pizza," and my friend said, "Yeah, and you should give us some of that D." He just sort of walked away. Not completely relevant, but I was a camp counselor for a group of about 9 13-year-old kids, all from a Christian affiliated school. They had somewhat foul language all week, mostly saying things like it or ass, and I had to constantly discipline them in whatever small way I could. Last day of camp and I could not get them to pack up their stuff and clean the cabin for anything. I told them if they cleaned the cabin well enough, I would give them 10 seconds of time in which they could say anything they wanted. They negotiated it up to 12 seconds. They probably cleaned the entire cabin in about a minute flat, something that usually takes 20 minutes at least. They then unleashed the foulest language I'd ever heard, except it was all 9 of them all trying to shout it out louder than the others all at the same time. So if anyone was walking by the cabin, they just would have heard random vulgar words being shouted like duck, rape, it, ass, cum, your mother, v.d. So that was a pretty good time. My girlfriend is a 6th grade English teacher. She was once trying to teach students how to use descriptive adjectives, using Jupiter as an example. She said Jupiter is gigantic, rather just really big. One of the students raised his hand, and with a completely straight face asked Ems, "How big would you say Uranus is?" I still think she was wrong to send him to the principal. You have to foster that kind of wit. I intern at a daycare, and we were asking the class of 4-year-olds questions for a card they would give to their mothers for Mother's Day. The conversation went like this. "What is your mother's name?" "Mommy." "No." "What is her real name?" "I don't know." "Okay. What does dad call mom?" "Itch." Throwaway. In high school I crushed on my music teacher, 12 years older than me, pretty hard. I was involved in all the extracurricular music things, so I saw him a lot. My senior year things got pretty involved. We became really close on a school trip and ended up texting quite frequently from there. He had a wife, so I never blatantly stated how I felt, but I'd often get texts like, "What do you think would have happened if we met in college?" We shared ridiculous things with each other, like our top 5 places we wanted to have a 6, and other totally inappropriate stuff. At the time I always wondered if he had romantic feelings toward me, but now I can look back and know something was there without a doubt. About a year later his wife ended up seeing how often he texted me on the phone bill, and things kind of sizzled out from there. I still think of him pretty often, but no, it could never ever work out. The sad thing is I hate on women who were in the same position as me, but I didn't care at the time. I fell for this guy and that's all I could see. So, yeah. Teachers can definitely tell when their students are crushing. Don't act on it. Edit. Typos. Once, I found 2 teachers getting it on in the basement. I'm homeschooled, but it doesn't make it any less traumatizing. I was convinced that one of my teachers was into me back in freshman year. I had a huge crush on her, and she was always so interested in what I had to say. She was this petite little redhead with ruby lipstick and an adorable voice. She would let me hang out with her after school in her room. Once, she showed interest in my martial arts class, so I invited her to come. She actually came for a class, which was basically the highlight of my life at the time. Looking back, she was just being a nice teacher, and there was no interest on her end. But 9th grade me was sure there was a chance. Former student of mine became a porn actress, mentioned my name during one of the scenes. Oh cute, oh cute, oh cute, oh cute. Cost me $700 in lawyer fees to get it removed. I doubt, but who knows. She was paid even that much for the whole scene. It was one of those girl is getting a bad grade and goes to see the teacher type storylines. Had no idea she had even thought of me like that, or why she dragged my name into it. I am a woman and taught at an all-girls school when I was 27-28. Nothing too extreme. But one or two girls did get a bit handsy, mostly because they didn't have much experience in life. But I had to lay down the rules a few times. Handsy being hugs lasting too long, coming up behind me and touching a little too close to my boobs or butt, and trying to hold my hand now and again. Quite innocent, but still not okay. I'm not a teacher, but when I was 9th grade, I always went to eat lunch at my favorite female math teacher because she was very nice to me and I guess I saw her kind of like a mother or aunt or something. I'm still not sure if I had crush on her or not. Anyway, one day, I was in her room at lunch with just me and her, and it was getting kind of hot. So I tried to take off my jacket, and you know how when you're trying to take off your jacket, your shirt goes with it. So it's almost like you're taking your entire top off unintentionally. Well, that happened, and I didn't think it was such a big deal. But the teacher freaked out and said Mechatronis 219. What are you doing? And that's when I realized she thought I was trying to get naked in front of her or something. My teacher, which is BTW one of the best teachers I've ever had, has been known for asking boys that are graduating out of my high school for their numbers. Then later on she calls them and asks them for 6. I don't know if this is true, but it wouldn't really come as a surprise. Not a teacher, but I had this professor once who looked exactly like Santa Claus, and he would always denote vectors as IE plus BJ plus CK, and when he said BJ the first time some kids laughed, and he turns around from the blackboard and says, if you're uncomfortable with BJS this isn't the class for you, and went right back into explaining vectors. Another time he was explaining how important friction is and said without friction none of us could have been born. And everyone's looking at him like WTF are you talking about Santa, and he goes your parents couldn't have had 6 without friction. Then he went on to teach us about 3D integration and Green's theorem. He was a cool dude. I work in the hood as a counselor, so most of my day is NSFW. In middle school we had this female English teacher who was rich and everybody hated her, even the other teachers. She got pregnant and the hormones and extra weight made her exponentially more itchy. We were all dissed to her in class because of her bad attitude, so the feelings of hatred were mutual between us. One of my friends had a question about an assignment we were doing. She was sitting at her desk grading papers or something, so he touched her on the shoulder to get her attention. She yelled at him and sent him to the office. She claimed he sexually harassed her and got him expelled. We all protested by complaining to the administration every day and by refusing to do anything she asked us to in class. They ended up reversing the decision after a week or so.